What's up, guys? Welcome to From Prison to Purpose. My name is Jimmy McGill, and I'm the host of the show. And today we have got a very special guest, and his name is George Sedberry, also known as White George. He told me earlier that's because his name is George and he's white. And so he's got a really amazing story of from prison to purpose. He spent a couple of years in Arkansas prisons. He's an Arkansas native, and he has been out of prison since 2015, and he found a way to harness the power of social media to raise awareness and do a lot of good and live a life of freedom and a life of purpose, and he gets to live it on purpose. So, White George, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jimmy. I appreciate it. Clarksville's beautiful this time of year.
It is pretty, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a lot prettier than prison fields.
Well, I tell you what, I got so sick of looking at fields at Cummins.
Yeah. Yeah. You ever have to pick potatoes?
Oh God, yeah. I was out in the fields. I was on light duty though, so 4 hours a day, but I picked a lot of vegetables.
Yeah.
A lot of vegetables. Built a lot of fences too.
I spent a significant amount of time on fence crew.
Yeah. It wasn't a bad job, but
I wasn't. Even when I got my class 1, they put me on fence crew.
That's what I did at Cummins. Yeah. I was
1B or 1C?
1B.
Okay. So you had a little trustee status.
Yeah, I was and then I went to work release, so I got 1A.
Right. Yeah, I've been to work release too. Now, you were 39 years old when you went to prison?
Yeah, I was arrested at 39 and went to jail, actually in Pulaski County, right before my 40th birthday. I turned 40 in Pulaski County.
So what led up to all that? Well, let's dive into who is White George. Where are you from? What was life like? How'd you grow up? All the things.
I'm from a little town called Bryant, Arkansas, the old sports powerhouse that it is. Went to school there my whole life. Never had air conditioning ever at Bryant. We didn't have it all the way through 12th grade. So good old Arkansas. And I went through life and, just meandered around, had jobs, did decent. I had surgery and got hooked on pain pills. And that love affair with opiates took me down a 10-year rabbit hole, a downward spiral that almost destroyed my life, cost me everything. And to feed my habit, I became a jewelry thief, a very prolific jewelry thief. And
what does prolific mean?
I don't know how many houses that I robbed. It was quite a few, but it went on for months and months to feed my habit. And more than just the opiates, I got addicted to the rush of my crime. And that became really, really dangerous. And I had rules about how I stole jewelry. And I remember violating my own rules, and that's what tripped me up. And I got caught on some tiny little detail, and it all unraveled.
So how old were you when you had the surgery and got hooked on pain pills?
2001, so I'd have been 30 years old.
Wow. So for 9 years, you were out there.
Well, no, I actually could feed my habit. It was the last year that I couldn't. We'd just come out of the recession and jobs were hard. I was making 6 figures a lot of times up to that, so I could afford my habit. So I was an honest addict, and then I wasn't. And
one day that switch hit.
Yeah. And once the switch, though, it's like that sociopathic part of my brain took over, and I just did it without feeling guilt, or I made it work in my head. I quit talking to God. Somehow like that would absolve me, and my need to get high or to keep from withdrawing was greater than any need or love I had at the time. It dominated my life.
Yeah. And so you just decided one day out of nowhere you were going to break in a house, or were you?
Saw an opportunity and I took it, and I realized it worked. And because it's all out in public.
Were you by yourself?
Oh yeah. I did it all by myself.
You didn't want to split
No, plus if you want to get away with it longer, don't have a fall partner.
Yeah.
I kept notes. I had a code book. I had logs of how I did it. It's a very complex process and procedure that I had in place that helped me scout, research, pull it off, get rid of anything. And it's why I went on undetected for so long.
What? Tell me about this.
I would go to houses for sale that had lock boxes on their front door. And because people put their houses on media now, I could literally look around a person's house, find the jewelry cabinet. Now, I owned a moving company for about 10 years, so I understand houses and layouts. I can walk in a house and know exactly where everything is because I've been in thousands of them. But I could research the home online, look at the floor plan. I knew where everything was, if they had a jewelry chest, if it was vacant, and I knew whether to go or not. And then I would go get the drop box, drill it out, take the key, dress in a shirt and tie, pull it in the driveway in the middle of the day and walk right in and walk out, just like a realtor.
Wow.
I was scum. Yeah, I was.
And all you took was the jewelry?
Yeah, pretty much. That's usually, and this sounds bad now saying the words, but I was careful about what I did. I never wanted anybody to feel like their home had been violated. So I didn't kick a door in. I used a key. Most people didn't even know I was there. Didn't leave fingerprints. I mean, I put a lot of thought into this because I actually cared. I know this sounds weird. I didn't want people to feel that, but I needed the money, and that was the trade-off I made. So that's how I'd go about it.
Wow. How'd you get caught?
Went to a house in a neighborhood, Chenal. That was a neighborhood I said I would never go to. I had rules. If houses were under $100,000, I wouldn't go in and take anything because I know those people worked hard for what they had. And over $350,000, I wouldn't, because there's a greater chance of a stay-at-home mom or a self-employed person who doesn't have a regular schedule. So I had these parameters, but I was getting desperate. I went to Chenal one day and I rang the doorbell a few times. I'd already gotten the key, no answer. I put the key in the door, and as right as I did, the door opened. The guy was taking a nap inside. And he's like, hey, and I've just lied, said I'm waiting on a realtor. And he goes, have you seen my lockbox? I go, no. Well, he wrote my license plate down. And about 2 weeks later, I was living in Benton, and Little Rock came down with Sling County Sheriff escorts to arrest me on a criminal mischief, I think. And they took me to jail, and everything unraveled. They found lockboxes in my apartment, and they didn't find anything stolen there because I'd sold it all. But because I violated my own rule, just happenstance with that guy, that everything just came apart quickly.
Wow. Wow. And so from the second they show up to arrest you, what happens then?
Go straight to Pulaski County Jail. I'd been dating a girl for like 4 years, and they let me call her. You know, and I told her I was arrested, blah, blah, blah. I love you. And never heard from her again. Like took everything I owned, moved out of state, just out of my life. I've still never talked to her. And
great relationship.
2011, which is fine. I was not a good dude. So
what was her name? Satan?
No, you know, it's funny. I loved her kids. I missed the kids. I hate that I was a disappointment, and she knew what I was doing. I was paying the bills with it. But I went to Pulaski County, and I've been to jail before, but not like this. And I will remember when they first take you back, right after they've processed you.
Yeah.
This guard looked at me, older man. He could tell I was nervous and unsure. And he looked at me and goes, hey, big man, this too shall pass. And I'll never forget those words from a good jailer at Pulaski saying that. Like,
yeah.
And believe it or not, it brought me peace, but you adapt quickly. And I spent a solid year in Pulaski waiting on this, 6 months to get my time and 6 months to go to prison.
Wow. And so when you go to court, who's your judge? Do you remember?
Herbert Wright.
Herbert Wright. He was my lawyer for a long time, you know?
I don't know what's crazy. Right. My dad died June 10th of 2011. I got arrested August 18th, 2 months later. But when my dad died at our deer camp, there was a waiting list to get in. Herbert Wright took over my dad's bed at deer camp.
Wow.
My dad and I had the same name, George Sedberry. Because when he called my name, I remember he kind of looked up at me like, I'm thinking I got this. My public defender was married to a guy that I deer hunted with for 25 years. He came and saw me, and you know, we're going to get this figured out. And I felt like I was in good hands, and it turned out my attorney was incompetent as all get out. But
yeah, you had a public defender,
public pretender.
Yeah.
I had her twice. Threatened to have to call the bar on her the second time to get her to do right.
Yeah. That's scary. They get to just swapping us out, you know.
But I learned to educate myself on not only criminal law, but criminal procedure. The second time I went back on a revo, I knew how better to work the system. But, you know, it's not fair. I mean, I hated jail, but I met some fascinating and interesting people there, people that I'll never forget, people that looked out for me, that taught me. I don't think people realize the type of ecosystem that exists when you're incarcerated.
Yeah. Yeah. So how long is your sentence when you get locked up?
13 years.
And you do 2 years on that?
Yeah, 13 on a B, so it'll be 26 months, you know.
Right.
And I went to work release, and I call it the EPA, the year kick out.
Let's back up just a bit. So you get sentenced to 13 years, you go back to the jail. How long are you in the jail before that?
6 months, because they didn't process my paperwork correctly.
So you spent 6 more months in jail waiting to go to prison.
Should have been out in 30 or 60 days. But
now, did you get credit for that year and 6 months?
Back end.
Okay.
They split it on the back. So
no credit up front, so it doesn't come anywhere near the 26. You still got to do.
I still did the 6 months more. Yeah.
Wow. So where do they send you when you leave the jail?
Newport Diagnostics went first, and 3 days in a one-man cell wasn't bad, and they shipped me off to Newport.
So what is diagnostics?
That's the unit in Malvern. Diagnostics, I think, is the biggest unit in the state. That's where they take us and process us, do it the medical exam, a haircut, psych eval, dialysis, kind of make sure that we're not going to unalive ourselves, and while they figure out what parent unit to send us to.
Wow. And your parent unit is the initial unit that you go to.
And the first one, which...
Yeah. And that's always, from that moment on, that's always the unit they try to send you back to first.
And you've done time at Newport too, right?
I have.
It was an interesting place.
I hated Newport. I hated it.
I hated the fields at Newport, yeah.
First time I went to prison was 1995. I turned 18 on my way to Varner unit. And Varner was my parent unit in 95. And that set the tone for me for doing time, because now you've got to understand that it was wide open back then. Cell phones weren't a thing really in 95. We had beepers, you know what I mean? So, and we had the brick phones too, you know, the long Nokia phones, but doing time was different back then. You know, everybody was smoking weed, everybody was gambling, playing cards. It was fun. You know, to be incarcerated, it was fun. You heard all these war stories, but I only got into one fight and I started it. You know what I mean? So
it wasn't gladiator school back then.
No, it's never, well, they said it was. You know, you hear 1,000 stories of what's going to happen when you get into prison. And I don't care who you are, you were terrified on your initial trip to prison. And when I get there, it's nothing like what I hear. It's everybody I knew from the streets. It's everybody I was in juvenile prison with. It was like a family reunion or a college reunion party. And we stayed up all night drinking coffee and talking smack, you know, trying to get out of host squad. And if you got rode up, you could buy a disciplinary for a bag of coffee. You could literally give a bag of keefy and get your write-up pulled. So nobody was really losing their class. And so, yeah, the system has obviously evolved and changed, more so for the worse when it comes to doing time. You can't pull your write-up no more. You know, inmates don't run the system like we used to. And so, okay, anyway, but enough about that. You get to Newport. Newport's your parent unit. Tell me about that. First day, you're walking in.
I remember the thing about diagnostics, they had us stand there naked or in our boxers for hours. I remember, and then I just remember that, thinking that's how prison's going to be. And we go to Newport and they have us sitting in the hall, and there's the lady that's over classification, and she's a very unpleasant lady. I'm sure she had to be. And I remember just sitting there not knowing, right? And it's interesting, you ran into people you knew from the streets and from incarcerated. I never, not once in prison, ran into somebody that I knew from the streets.
That's crazy.
Never. Because I didn't run in those circles.
Yeah.
So I was alone all the time. And I remember I went in those barracks and we had to go out in the field and work. And I mean, I didn't like it, but it was an adjustment in Newport. It wasn't that bad of an experience. It was more my fear and anxiety. But you get up and go to work every day, having to learn the rules, trying to get comfortable. Everybody's trying to find their place. And as a 39-year-old, and you got a lot of 21-year-old hardheads, I had to learn patience. And I learned how to control my temper, my hands, because my hands have solved a lot of problems for me.
Yeah.
But prison's not necessarily the place that you can solve all your problems that way. So I learned to adapt to the people around me. I learned to... There was no reason to be a badass. Just be a nice, honest, straight up dude, look out for other people. And that worked for me. Mm-hmm. In Newport, you know, I will tell you the most traumatic thing.
What year were you at Newport?
I went in, I got arrested in 2011. So I went in summer of 2012. So I was in host squad in the summer. I made it to my barracks after 60 days. I got a kitchen job, which was a good job to have.
Yeah.
And
you'd eat good.
Oh yeah, I'd eat good. And plus I was buying sets. My best friend kept money on my books, so I never needed money. So I mean, I did well. Oh God, this is bad. I'll tell you this. We were watching Razorback game on TV, and because I had strung up speaker wire to make an antenna, I could pick up an AM radio station that covered the Razorback game that didn't use an 8-second delay. So I'm hearing the play on the radio 8 seconds before you see it on TV. So me and a buddy of mine who's now dead would go, I got $1, they're going to make an interception. I got $1, they're going to make a touchdown. And people call that bet. Sure enough, 8 seconds later, it happened on TV. We did that for the whole football season.
Wow.
Like it was, I mean, I'm an inmate. I didn't feel bad.
Yeah.
But it was a great little hustle. And then the other thing I learned
What would have happened if you'd have got caught?
What are they going to do? I mean, I pulled it.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? Whoop me?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in fights before, but I look back on that. And the other thing, I guess, that stands out about Newport is I developed a love for Scrabble.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Love for Scrabble.
Same.
Every day.
I kill you on the 2-letter words.
Oh, QI is my favorite. I know how.
Yeah, everybody challenge.
But when I got to my second time down, and we'll get to that, I never lost a game of Scrabble, and I charged $1 a game for my entire time. Made money off Scrabble. Made money off that. That was my hustle.
Yeah.
That, and I know I got my dad bod, but I didn't eat sweets. So I would run a store on honey buns.
Yeah.
It's fun. You know, you do it to kill time. You do it to Newport.
What's the funniest thing that you saw in prison? What was that? One of the times you just couldn't help but laugh your butt off.
It's a guy named Roman. He was 50-something years old, short little guy. He got into it with a youngster over dominoes. I remember they threw my dominoes and that made me mad. And I remember them getting into it over it, and they stood up, and that young kid was like daring the old guy, and the old guy hit him like 6 or 8 times right in the mouth before that kid could react. You know, not hard, but just fast hands. And when they started tussling, the dude shit himself. Like
the old guy?
The old guy, right out his pants, leg, and we were like, I felt so bad for the guy, but I've never seen anybody crap themselves in the middle of a fight, like right there on the floor, and
just rolled right out the pants.
Rolled right down his pants. Just out popped the turd. And I felt so bad. I'm still laughing. Like, did this happen? Like, only in prison could this happen.
Yeah.
I still get, you know, and then I used to put habanero peppers in spreads I would give to my good friends like Shane Powers, because I'd always feed him, but I'd always lace it with habaneros, and he would eat it, suffer, just
the
stupid things we did. But yeah, Roman pooping his pants while in a fight was one of the...
It's wild, the things that we think's funny when we're incarcerated.
Did my first stabbing that I saw, friends of mine had said people will bet on how many holes people get stuck in them, close hold. And it just so happens at the table, I remember watching, the first thing I did was start counting the stabs. I thought 7, so I was like 7. So some other guys looked at me like, all right, I'll take this, you know, and they kind of knew what we were doing, and we were at Newport. And so I think there's 5 of us that bet, and 7 was the number exactly. So I won $4, you know, off the other 4 guys that were in the bet, or 5 guys. And I remember that's how I dealt with the brutality, was making a joke out of it. Or, you know, the guy lived. It's hard to get stabbed to death when it's a drive-by. But I just remember like thinking to myself, has my mind gone to such a place that I can rationalize, and you know what I mean, that I can live with this in a way that, and yeah, my mind did. It just adjusted. Self-preservation. You've seen tons of horror in there, and the ability to find a way to categorize it and live with it amazes me to this day that I could do that.
You think it had any effect on you in who you are now, the things you saw in prison?
It's funny you bring that up, because I was a bit of a sociopath before I went to prison, which is something I want to ask you about, because I obviously didn't care if I hurt other people and my need to feed my addiction. But I think seeing what I saw and experienced in prison has opened up a level of empathy in my heart that I didn't know I could have for other humans. My ability to care, my ability to put other people before myself. I never had that ability. Prison, in a way, sparked that. I came out of there not happy with what I saw in the world anymore. I feel pain that other people feel. I never felt that before. But it took the terror and just the prison experience to teach me that. So yeah.
What was the worst thing you saw while you were incarcerated?
Saw or experienced?
Same thing.
I had a family member write a letter to the warden at Cummins, put me on the box in front of the whole committee, and they read the letter and asked him to stop reading it to me, saying that I am a menace to society. I should do 13 years day for day in prison. That's a family member. And the warden told me, because I've been in this business 30 years, I've never seen a family member write a letter like this. Yeah. And I was crushed.
Devastated.
Yeah, and I still have no relationship with that family member either. But
yeah,
well, it was an immediate family member. And I remember going back to my barracks, and I have a friend there named Big B who should be getting out next year. And Big B saw something was wrong with me. And he didn't even ask. He goes, just go sit on your rack. He told everybody to stay away from me until lights out. So nobody was going to the rack. Now these big beasts, 6'9", 350 pounds. But I just remembered that act of kindness in that moment, because that I realized is the moment where I could lose my life because I was angry and I would try to hurt somebody, or I would get hurt. And that I realized that I just had to find a way to deal with and process that. So that was the scariest thing to me, because I would have tried to kill you if you came at me. I just didn't feel like I had anything to live for in that moment.
Did you ever dabble in contraband?
Oh, yeah. I got high occasionally, not much, but I did. And it was better quality than the streets. And
isn't it funny how that happens? Do you think that's because we don't have access to the drugs, so when we do them, they hit harder? Or do you think they're really better?
I've been clean for a while, too. My receptor sites had reset. So I would do that. And I bought a Scrabble game from the gym illegally, but the guards didn't mess with me because it was peaceful activity. Yeah, I mean, I had minor contraband, but I wasn't doing it. I didn't deal with cell phones, or I want to go home. So I was kind of careful about what I did.
Yeah.
It was, I look back, because when you said you went to Varner, I'd always heard Gladiator School. And the other scary moment I had is when my second time down, we're on the bus and we pull up to Varner. I'm like, oh, crap. And the guy's like, here, we're home. And I'm like, oh, this is not good. He goes, we're just kidding. Turn around and pulled up to Cummins. They did it just as a prank to the 9 of us on the bus.
Yeah.
That was, my stomach was in my throat for that.
I remember as we were traveling to Grady, Arkansas, and when Varner and Cummins came into sight and we began pulling down that long gravel road, you could see it. It looked like Castle Grayskull. It's like terrible. And it's very scary when the prison actually comes into your vision and you're like, wow. And you see this gigantic multi-buildings with razor wire all around it and the gun towers, and you're like, it's real, and in that moment you realize you have severely screwed your life up, and all you've ever heard is war stories, prison movies, scared straight tactics, and now you're about to get real life action of it.
I remember hearing that first door slam behind me when I got to Newport the very first time, and I realized that was a prison door. And there is no way out of this. There is nothing. I have nothing but to look face forward and deal with whatever's in front of me. That was one of the most sobering feelings of my life, is hearing that door slam. But we were out in Host Squad working, and we're picking. And I remember the rider hollered at me, hey, Sedberry, you step closer. I've only got about a 30-yard kill range. I mean, he was not malicious. He was just stating a fact, you got to keep me within the kill range of his sidearm at all times, because we were kind of working out. And I realized, that is serious business. That is what...
Yeah, they're going to shoot you. You get off the gun line.
Yeah, that's what will happen.
Yeah. So how long did you spend on Host Squad?
I did my 60 days.
60 days and all.
Yeah, that's all. I never got in disciplinary in prison.
Never?
Never.
I never lost your class.
Model inmate.
Okay.
Came close at work release.
Yeah.
But that was a setup, and I got out of it.
So how long were you at Newport before they transferred you to work release?
I got there in June, so November, 5 months. I had 3 months in the kitchen, and then I got to Benton work release, which was a godsend.
Yeah. So did they give you a good job at work release?
It took me, I worked for, didn't pay much, but I worked for a truck and trailer shop in North Little Rock. And I worked with some guys that I made friendships with. So we all 4 of us got to go to work together, $8 an hour. But it let me have a couple of $1,000s stacked up when I caught the year kick out. But what it did is it helped me get my CDL, and that CDL is what I rebuilt my life with. So I will forever be grateful for that work release job.
That's cool. So you got the year kick out. How long were you in work release?
I did my 60, and then I did my regional. So I think it took me 90 days to get a job, or 120 days. And then I think I had my job for 5 months before I caught the kick out. And I went right back to work there. They doubled my pay. Yeah. Free world job then.
Now, is this the first time you're in prison or the last time?
First time.
So you come home, you make parole, you come home, you got a couple grand, and you end up back in prison again?
Yeah, I went right back to kind of slowly doing what I was doing before.
Oh my gosh, tell me about it.
Okay, as an addict, I wanted to know if pills still hit the same. I just was curious. What would happen if I took a pill?
Yeah.
And that's the lesson I learned. If I take one, it's over. So
It's wild because the disease of addiction will get to talking to you in your own voice. At least with me, like, you could ask me, how long you been clean now? And the answer is 9 years, 8 months, and 24 days. And I'll hear my head say, and they said you couldn't quit. You know what I mean? And I'm like, wow, this thing really is cunning, baffling, and powerful. It will sneak up on you and try to convince you to kill yourself.
For me, and I've learned this, I think it applies to most people having substance abuse problems, or any type of addiction, be it gambling or whatever. I think we have a lack of coping skills. And I grew up decent childhood, but there was some issues with a parent, like some really, really bad issues with a parent. And at 53 years old, I realized how significantly they affect me, how I wasn't taught how to cope. And being on substances let me get outside my own head and not feel pain and not the thoughts or those voices. And I realized I just didn't know how to cope. That's all anything ever was coping. So it's funny. I went back to doing what I did and I got arrested again. And this time I knew what to expect, right? It's not nearly as scary. But I went before Herbert Wright again. And I remember this stands out to me. They gave me 4-8 with 4 suspended. And I was already in Cummins waiting on the court date. And I remember my attorney goes, "Oh, you're going to have to do 2 years now if you can't go to RPF." That's what he's going to sentence me, is RPF. And you can't go from the joint to RPF directly because of your break politics. You have to go from the street.
Yeah.
And when he said that, I'm like, thank God. And she's like, "You had 2 years." I go, "I'll be out of here in September." And this was like July. Yeah. Because my own lawyer doesn't understand prison math, even though that's what she does for a living. I already knew my time. Sure enough, I went home right before Labor Day. I called my time. I knew I was making the 90-day kick out.
Yeah.
So
how'd you get caught the second time?
I think because of my publicity for my first time, somebody recognized me doing the same thing.
You did the same exact technique.
Well, I was going to open houses instead of breaking into houses. I was going to open houses on Sundays when Realtor'S had it, and I would kind of grab a piece or two of jewelry and keep moving. Yeah. And I was being a piece of crap. Like, I needed to feed my habit. I wasn't done. I hadn't hit bottom yet. You know the feeling.
Yeah. For sure. So that's kind of scandalous. You just go in there. You're a very patient thief. Just go in and grab a couple rings and leave. Go to the next house.
Well, it's sociopathic. I mean,
yeah.
But again, I got addicted to the rush.
Yeah, for sure.
It's funny how many people accuse me of stealing stuff I didn't steal.
I just think it's very courteous of you. You're like a courteous crook. You're only going to take a little bit of I would have took the whole jewelry box, right? Like, if I'm going to take a risk, I'm going to take the whole risk. Like,
but what if that happened to your mom, friend? You'd be angry. Somebody took all her jewelry, right?
So you're going to steal just a little bit of it? Mm-hmm. You're still going to devastate the person.
They don't know. My head, if I only took 1 or 2 pieces, okay, this sounds bad. Let's say a woman has a jewelry chest, right? Yeah. Psychologically, up top is their everyday jewelry. Usually somewhere down the line is going to be their heirloom stuff or party stuff, fancy stuff they'll wear not very often, the big diamonds, the real ones. So I knew to look down there, I always carried a magnet and a loop with me so I could look to see if it was real gold, it was plated. And then I could also test diamonds, and I would know because I had a tester, so I'd know right off the bat. Yeah. And the thing is, if you don't wear that thing but twice a year, you're not going to look in that drawer to see if it's there. So 4 months from now, who stole it? Did your husband take it because he's got a gambling problem and had to sell it, or your kid addicted? You don't know who to accuse. And that was kind of why I think I got away with it for so long.
Yeah.
Because you didn't know I was there. Like, there's no fingerprints, nothing. I wore gloves, left no trace.
So, okay, on your second trip to prison, did you go back to Newport?
Cummins. The granddaddy of them all.
All right. Now, how long were you there this time?
10 months.
What was that trip like? Did you see anything different at Cummins versus Newport?
Yeah, I like Cummins a lot better. Cummins was based more on respect. And I like to say Cummins is 80% boredom, 20% terror. When stuff pops off at Cummins, it tends to be real. I was in South Hall, lived right by the execution chamber. When you walk by it every day to chow. Cummins, I tried every rehab program when I was at Newport and work release. I took SAE, I took all the classes. Even took parenting classes, even though I don't have kids, but I was trying. And I will say this about Newport, because I still can't believe I got away with this. I was given SATP is what I was high risk for. So I knew I was going. If I went, I couldn't go to work release. And I knew I needed work release because I'd lost everything. I wrote Matt Cameron, or Mike Cameron was his name, over programs back then for ADC. And I wrote him the letter of my life, explaining I'm 40 years old. I got to put my life back together. Can I please just take SAE? I got the letter back that he approved SAE for me. I got out of SATB. So when people found out, they started asking me to write letters. And this is a complete tangent. A guy I worked in laundry with that I could not stand drove me crazy. So he asked me to write a letter because he couldn't read or write. And this dude was very unpleasant to be around. So I wrote a letter for him. It wasn't the letter he thought it was because he couldn't read it. It was like 10 days later, they had him out of the unit up to SATP. He was trying to get out of it. I made sure he went. Don't even feel bad about it at all.
That's scandalous.
Tried to get me in trouble with my boss, Miss Shanika Nickelberry. How are you doing, Miss Nickelberry? She was my guardian angel in prison. I still talk to her. She's no longer at ADC.
Yeah.
She looked out for me and she was kind to me. And I had one of those. When I told her what I did, she just kind of smirked.
Yeah, well, I guess you got to eliminate your ops any way you can eliminate them, right? Like,
I could write letters.
yeah, okay.
I mean, better than fighting them and losing my time and going back to the unit.
So did you see anything funny at Cummins Unit?
Yeah, I mean, I won't say I had a good time at Cummins, but I had a better time. I learned at Cummins because I didn't try any of the programs. I didn't even try. I laid in my bed in my rack, refused to go to work the last 6 weeks of work. Never went out in the field again. They busted my barracks the week after I left, though. The guys were laying in bed every day like I was.
Yeah.
I just didn't give a shit. Didn't care. But I learned more about humanity and life and the people. You know, making spreads, breaking bread together was different. Cummins was just a different beast, different people. I got to know a lot of lifers, the guys in
different class of doing time.
That's a better way to put it. Yeah. And I hung around a lot of lifers, a lot of guys with murder charges, and some of my closest friends in there. They taught me how to read people, how to read situations. Like that lesson I got from those 10 months, you can't buy that anywhere in the world.
Yeah, you know, that's one of the common themes that we hear on this. And we've heard it. This is, I think, the third podcast we've shot this week, and we've heard it every episode, right? The ability to read people, to read the room and read the situations is something prison really fine tunes and helps you hone in on.
It's scary how well you can read a room now.
Yeah.
You asked me funny and I'm racking my head because I know I laughed a lot, but I'm not.
Yeah.
It's just so much suffering.
Yeah.
It's hard to, but I have good memories. I made friendships. I mean, I'm still friends with today.
Yeah, for sure.
From that. And
I got friends that'll die on the yard doing life over robberies, murder. And that's why I push to be successful and to have my life showcase as much purpose as I can dig out, right? Like I got so many people that can't live life that they're living through me. That's why I like going back into the prisons, right? Like that's why I wrote the book From Prison to Purpose. That's why I started the podcast, right? And now we're working on getting the podcast onto the tablets here in Arkansas. So, you know, this is for my people. When they see me, when they see you, when they, you know, even when they see Ty, even though he's behind the scenes, they see Ian, they see JD, they see successful people. We're one of them who made it to this side. We're one of them. We're not somebody from the other side that's coming in saying, hey, get your stuff together and you can have a life worth living. We're the proof in the pudding that, hey, if your mouth and your actions sync up, the video and audio are in sync, you can really do this thing.
You know, it's funny. Social media has opened the door for me, like Ian and JD, even you. I wanted to speak up. Like you said, those are my people. Mm-hmm. All day long, ex-cons are my people. They'll always be my people. I have a soft spot for them. I will help them as long as they're trying to help themselves. But I didn't know how to speak up.
Yeah.
That was the problem. I wanted to, but I didn't know what to say. You know, now I can say I'm a former drug addict, racist, ex-con, or convicted felon times 10 and ex-con, and people sit up and listen. And I wear that badge without shame or embarrassment. You know, I because I changed. And by God, if I can change, anybody can change.
So were you affiliated while you were doing time?
Nah. I just grew up really, really racist. Just taught that and believed it, that I was superior to other people based on skin color. It's a form of mental illness. And I always tell people racism is a coping mechanism. You don't have to be accountable when you can blame other people, so you don't have to cope. And
that's a pretty big shift from where you're at right now, because your whole social media platform is about advocacy and awareness for marginalized populations and minorities. So how do you go from being a racist to an advocate for hard to reach populations and minorities?
Okay, I got goosebumps. My first cellmate in Newport was named Larry. Last name begins with a W. I cannot remember. I'd love to find Larry Watkins. It's a black guy from Little Rock. And he goes, "Are you racist?" I go, "Yeah, pretty much." He goes, Can we talk?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" Because I think we were on 23. We were on lockdown at that time for something. So we're stuck in that cell. And so we started talking. And he asked me all kinds of hard questions about what it's like to be racist. And I got to ask him what it's like to be a black man in America. And we were cellmates for 2 weeks. And one day I came back to my cell. He's gone. He was going home when I got back from the kitchen that morning. But there was sleeves of crackers and some tuna and some other things in my bed because my money hadn't made it from jail yet. And he left a note. He goes, "Just take care of the next guy." And I will never forget what Larry did for me. Just that. And at the moment, it didn't hit me that it didn't. But as I went on, there's a lot of guys who can't read in prison, right? And I'm a voracious reader. And I would read and they're like, "What are you reading?" So I'd start telling them a little bit about the book. And then I would get to where I would summarize the book in a 5-minute conversation to Cliff Notes. And then I started reading books from other communities, like I had Hispanic cellmates, black cellmates, and I started to hone my storytelling skills that way. But it wasn't until I got back to the free world the second time in 2015 did I see the world differently. I saw it through the eyes of the men who shared their experiences with me. And it still was slowly dawning on me. God had pulled a veil back from my eyes, and I thought the world had changed. It wasn't. I had changed. And one of the things I remember in prison, understanding that my racism, my faith, and my morality had never intersected until that point. Nobody in church told me being racist is wrong, that you can't serve God and think that way of other communities and cultures. And Larry made such an impact on my life because we had a real conversation, but I was very honest with him. And that may be the first time I was ever honest with another human about the way I thought about other people. And I felt comfortable telling him these negative things about his culture. But he taught me something that I'll never forget. He goes, "Your grandmother doesn't dislike me because of the color of my skin." He goes, "Your grandma probably loved me." I'm like, "You know what, Larry? She would. You're a cool guy, you know?" He goes, "Especially old white people fear what they don't understand. And when you don't take the time to get to know something, understand something, naturally you're going to turn against it and hate it." He goes, "It's a lack of education, willful ignorance," because that's all it is. They broke it down for me in a way but it made me confront my own demons. Because, I often say if I had mowed my yard for 6 months and I got cars up on blocks and a white or black family moves down the street, I'm going to blame them for my low property value, right? Because that's what we did, not the fact that I was white trash. I never had to look in the mirror and admit that I'm the reason for my own problems, not somebody else. And again, it took a couple of years of being in society and seeing this before I could figure out my thoughts and how to speak up. And then once I found a way to speak up, I just won't shut up.
Yeah, I get it.
Now, but inmates matter. Like what you do matters. Like that is something I see the impact you make in people's lives, the impact you've made in my life. Seeing what you do inspires me that we can achieve greatness, especially if we collectively do it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, man.
I want to ask you a question.
Oh, you want to ask me?
I absolutely do.
I'm going to flip the script. You're going to be the host.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Jimmy, based on everything I know or have heard about you, because I knew people that knew you from back in the day, you were sociopathic without a doubt, if not psychopathic, like no care in the world who you hurt, just didn't have that ability. And now you seem to have such intense level of empathy for others. What caused that shift in you?
It feels good to help people. It feels good to give back. It's almost very selfish. I want to help people, but it's more because it feels really good to me to help people. Now, I don't know if that's a gift that God's given me, but I know this. I did a lot of wrong. I did a lot of harm. I hurt a lot of people that didn't deserve it, and I will spend the rest of my life making up for that. And so for all the houses I broke into, I donate as much as I donate. For all the people that I hurt, I try to help as many people right? I was a burden on the community, on society. And so now I try to be a contribution to it. Like that's in a nutshell. I'm far from perfect. The only thing I've done perfect in 10 years is not get high. I don't do any drugs. I don't drink. I don't smoke weed. I don't pop pills. Like my definition of recovery is abstinence-based recovery. Now I don't judge anybody, right? Like if you can smoke weed and drink, hey, good for you. I can't. At the end of my beer is an 8-ball. At the end of my blunt is a syringe. So I don't play with fire because fire will burn my ass, right? And it's pretty amazing. Ever since I got sober, law has left me alone. I haven't committed a crime, and I've got a life that's pretty phenomenal. So,
It's funny. I don't speed. I drive the speed limit.
I do speed. So,
But I was on parole for 9 years, so I didn't want any interaction with law enforcement.
Yeah.
I don't drink at all. A teetotaler, I guess. But I think it feels the exact same way. Like you said, it feels good to help people, and I'm trying to pay karma back that I have depleted, because there's victims in the world that exist, just like you, innocent people who had no reason to cross paths with me, that I negatively affected their life. And I guess I'm always chasing that debt, like you are. It feels good, but you're chasing the debt. We need to. I'm glad you said that, though, because it kind of validates how I look at it without feeling selfish about it.
yeah. So how did you end up becoming an influencer, right? Like you've got over 100,000 followers on Instagram. You've got almost 500,000 on TikTok. Like, where did all that come from?
October 2022, I started a new job driving a dump truck. And I was like, what's this TikTok thing? I want to make a video. And I made a couple of science tricks, physics tricks with Coke bottles. And they went viral like pretty quickly. And I was like, this is fun, right? You get that dopamine hit, that validation. And I've been doing it for about 4 months. And my grandmother used to share a story with me about a guy she knew as a child in Arkansas City, Arkansas. So I told that story because this young boy went on to become the first Black American on the Forbes 400 richest list. Wow. On the $1 billion media empire. And he created Jet and Ebony magazine and Fashion Fair Cosmetics, which is a huge cosmetic line. But my grandparents knew them. So I told that story as a white guy, not knowing how the internet would take it. And I mean, did like 100,000 views on TikTok right away. I'm like, why no more of these stories? So I just started regurgitating what I knew, and I started researching them. And this dovetailed with the change I was feeling in myself, the things I wanted to do. And then I did a video on historically Black colleges. I spent a couple of months researching it. It was a 5-minute video, and it went viral big time. And that was on a Monday. And I remember looking at my ex-girlfriend on a Thursday and going, do you want to go see some campuses? She goes, sure. So on Memorial Day, we drove to 4 historically Black college campuses. School wasn't in session. Nobody was there. I researched them. I walked around the campus, and I felt this connection. I felt this energy with these schools, and I could tell the stories and biographies of the schools passionately, knowing nobody there, never having stepped foot there. And I knew that weekend in 2023 that I found my path. I found my purpose in that moment, standing there. As much as I've ever known anything in my life to be concrete, that was concrete. And I have never looked back.
Yeah, it's a true story of conversion, right? Like, so it's like with me, like I'm the epitome of what you would have thought about as a crook. Like it was a big deal to law enforcement everywhere that I got sober, right? It was a big deal when people I did time with started seeing me changed, because hands down, anyone who knew me knew I would die with a life sentence, or I'd die in a robbery, or I would die with a syringe in my arm. And then I become this leading voice for reentry and recovery, right? And so then it's the same thing with you. God uses the racist to become a voice for minorities. That's crazy. That is a God. Only God does that. Only God will take something that is consumed with hate and make it be the very definition of love.
We had to live these experiences, Jimmy, to have these stories to be redeemed. You know, I tell people I just walked 2,802 miles across the country. I started on April 28th, and I finished a week ago today.
It's a lot of walking.
It's a lot of walking.
How many steps was that? Yeah. Do you got a step counter?
No, it's 2,800 times 2,000. So what is that? Over 2 million, 4 million steps?
That's crazy.
About 2,000 steps in a mile. But I left to start this journey with $400 in my pocket when I left. I went to see Ian in New York to do his podcast.
Oh, E. Diddy.
Oh, yeah, he did. Maybe old king himself. Went down to Texas to kind of drum up support. And remember, I only had $400 in my pocket, right? So I look at it as like the loaves, the bread, and the fish. And I prayed to God. I've been praying about it. I was like, it's time I do this. So I just did it. And God has provided. He's opened so many doors. When I tell you I walk on faith, brother, I walk on faith because I had nothing else in my life but faith. And that faith has given me a fat belly. It has provided for me. It's protected me. It has just led me on this incredible journey because for once in my life, I trusted God and not myself.
Yeah, you're doing great stuff too.
I never knew.
Yeah, it's cool, man. So have you met any celebrities? What celebrities have you met?
Well, I'm going to tell you the coolest one, and not met, is Snoop Dogg follows me on Instagram. And that was pretty
not
cool.
the dog,
Yeah,
pal.
I got Shaq started following me last year on TikTok on one of his accounts. I had dinner with Freddie Mitchell, played for the Philadelphia Eagles, wide receiver of the Super Bowl, first round draft pick out of UCLA. He bought me a steak dinner, put me up in a hotel. JT Thomas, one of the original Steel Curtain members of the Steelers, #1 draft pick out of Florida State, first Black American player ever to play at Florida State. And he was a first round draft pick and graduate. So I became friends with JT because I love my Steelers. Kansas City Chiefs invited me to their training camp. So I got to walk up with the coaches and players after practice. Met Harrison Butker, the kicker, Chris Jones, their big $150 million.
You got a lot of connections to the sports industry, it sounds like.
I got that in the shoe industry. Sneakers.
Must be all the walking.
Couldn't get free shoes to save my life.
Couldn't get a sponsorship deal with all that 4 million steps. That's wild.
You know, I've met and talked to a lot of people like college presidents, CEOs. I met a few billionaires. I met Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
That's nice.
And I was like, I got to meet him. I asked his security is like ex-Delta Force, like 2 badass white dudes, right? And I was like, is it cool? And they're like, yeah, because Dan's in a wheelchair. He had a stroke. And I was like, Mr. Gilbert, you are the 5th billionaire I've met. He goes, but am I the funniest? And I don't know, Mark Cuban's pretty funny too. And he gave me this look and his security started laughing at me. And I'm like, he goes, the Mavericks just beat the Cavs last night because Dan owns the Cavaliers. And I was like, oh, crap. So anyway, he was a good sport about it. But right before that, I met Robert Smith, the billionaire, tech investor. Yeah. I met him standing. I was at MetLife Stadium getting ready to go out on the field at halftime. Oh, life's been crazy. And I look over and go, you're the 4th billionaire I've met. And he's like, who's the first 3? I'm like, Sam Walton, Jerry Jones, and Mark Cuban.
Yeah.
So, and I had one call me on the phone, the billionaire hotel owner. Called me because I made a video about his dad coming to America in a 60-second video 9 months earlier. And they show it at their meetings. And so Mitch and I became friends.
That's cool, man.
God has opened doors that, but I realized though, Jimmy, you've met some incredible people, right? I met Lori Rothschild. I met her through you, you know.
Lori's amazing.
She's an incredible woman.
Yeah.
And I always feel like God put us in this, like, Warren Sapp, I noticed he liked the video this morning, the NFL player, Octavia Spencer, the actress. Just, it's crazy when you can connect with people. Are just people. I don't care what you do for a living, how much money you have. Yeah. As long as you're real with them, and I'm a good storyteller. And so.
Yeah. Now, speaking of storytelling, I heard a rumor that you performed at the Apollo.
September 14th, 2023.
Oh, wow. So it's probably safe to say that you were the only former racist who did the Apollo.
And told him that on stage.
Wow. Can you tell me one of the jokes you told?
Well, I asked him, I told him that we just found out my granddad is addicted to Viagra. And people were like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, my Nana, she's taking it really hard, like really hard.
Wow.
And I went down a few more. I told just some dad jokes, because I was like, I ate a kid's meal at McDonald's this morning and his mom was furious.
You're stupid. That's freaking hilarious, man.
You know, the Energizer Bunny got arrested and he was charged with battery. Oh. But I had dad jokes, right? And I don't have any kids that I know of. Yeah. Does that make me a faux pas?
Oh, wow.
So I told the jokes, and then I told him, I said, I'm a former racist, drug addict, convicted felon, ex-con, and this is my story. Oh, to back up, I'll make this quick. Before I go on stage, the DJs play music and the stage manager goes, do you want to do a cold opening? I go, what's a cold opening? She goes, you're going to walk out and the DJ's just going to stop playing and you're going to speak. People are not going to have any introduction. It's the hardest thing to do here. I'm like, let's do that. because I'm an idiot, right? Now, I did stand-up comedy before this to get my legs under me because it's nerve-wracking to be up there, especially in a stand-up setting. But I figure if I can handle stand-up, I can handle the Apollo, and there's about 4,000 Black Americans there. So when I told him I'm a former racist, you heard the air just go out of the room. And first off, when the DJ stopped spinning, it was like, and then I walk out and people are like, what the heck is this white dude? Because there's a sign above me that says HBCU inspired, historically Black college and university. And I'm a white dude. So I told him the jokes. I got him to laughing because I rubbed the stump like Steve Harvey would do. And I want to know if Steve could tell jokes on Paulo, I could do it. So I got him laughing. I had to tell everybody, sit down, classes in session. I'm going to give you a history lesson. I told him I grew up racist. And then I basically told him about Black American history and my story. But the whole time I'm up there, Jimmy, I had a guy come out, Terrell, my buddy from Nashville, Tennessee, works for Uncle Nearest Whiskey. I had him come on stage and set up an easel. And Terrell's a Black guy. And he starts doing art. And I never acknowledge him over there on the side of the stage. So right before my time is up, I said, ladies and gentlemen, there's a woman named Cincinnati Johnson in Shelbyville, Tennessee. And her dream is to see her son perform his art on stage at the Apollo Theater. Ladies and gentlemen, meet her son, Terrell. And I walked over and handed him the microphone and said, say hi to your mom, Terrell. Let him close the show for me. And that they auctioned off the painting that night. That night changed my life. Do you remember Edwin Moses, the track star in the 80s, the hurdler?
No, I'm a horrible sports.
Edwin Moses has the longest winning streak in sports world history. He won 9 years, 9 months, and 9 days without losing a race, 122 consecutive races. If you make a single mistake in a 400-meter hurdle race, it's over. Single touch the hurdle at all. 122 perfect races, Olympic gold medalist, and he was in the audience that night.
Wow.
And now Edwin and I become friends. I hung out with him in New York. He invited me to Atlanta for his movie premiere that Morgan Freeman did. But he was there that night. And there were some other people that I've gotten to know, and that opened doors for me.
It seems like every situation leads you to a new situation.
God is amazing. I was nowhere near smart enough, strong enough, or anything to make the change I did had not God not put his hand on me. There's no way.
So can we do some fun facts about White George?
Absolutely. What do you want to know?
Let's see. What's your favorite band?
Alice in Chains.
Wow. Favorite song?
Would.
Favorite movie?
Either Shawshank Redemption or...
Get out of here. Why does every prison content creator like prison movies?
Pool Hall Junkies.
Pool Hall Junkies. Guess what mine is?
Annie?
Stomp the Yard.
Is it really?
Yeah. Since we're talking about HBCUs.
Yeah. Wow.
Stomp the Yard 1 is my favorite movie. You know, the story of the underdog becomes victorious, all that cool stuff. All right.
You know how many of those step shows I've been to live and in person now?
How many?
Oh God, I've been all over the country.
Can you step?
No, hell no.
You got that kind of rhythm.
No, but I know how to film it.
I know you do.
And that's the cool thing. I get invited in some places. I'm the only white person in the room, and I'm comfortable in my own skin, but I'm there because I love and appreciate the community and culture. And I'm unapologetically white. I'm never going to be anything but white. But
are you a Virgo?
Yes, I am. How'd you know?
Because I like you.
September 16th. Yeah.
September 20th.
Are you really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Christmas Eve, baby. Then I'm
my son's September 14th.
My dad's was the 16th. My sister's is the 13th. My great grandma's the 14th. My uncle's the 15th.
It's like all Virgos have multiple Virgos that are close to them. Birthday. That's weird, huh?
I'm a virgin.
Yeah. Wow.
So I like saying that.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all.
What's your favorite band?
I don't have one. It's been a long time since I had a favorite band. I guess my favorite song of all time historically has been Joan Jett, I Love Rock and Roll. I'm a classic baby. I grew up in, Led Zeppelin, Skinner, Joan Jett, all that type of stuff. Cinderella, Wasp, Poison.
Lucky Lawless.
And then somehow along the lines, I got introduced to gangster rap, and so stuff like that happened. What's your favorite pastime?
That's almost like asking me what I do for fun, because
or what do you do for fun?
Yeah, but that's the thing is that, or what I love to do, I'd like to have fun, period. I like going fishing, for instance, is not always fun. So I can't always say, I started breaking this statement down. I don't really have hobbies or fun anymore. I just spent 7 months walking. I research, I write, I record. Like, I don't have a fun life, but I guess that fulfills me. Talking to people, talking to strangers is the most fun thing I do. And I would not change that, to be honest with you. That is walking into a room where I know nobody and then having that room and meeting people and making them feel good and special, shining a light on them makes me feel good. So that is fun to me.
Yeah. So what's in the future for White George?
Next year, I'm going to over 70 historically Black college campuses. I'm a full-time RVer. I'm a nomad, so I live wherever I am. And I just drove here from California. I'm headed to Atlanta for the Celebration Bowl. I've got these 70 campuses. And then I'm hosting a couple of big conferences into 2026. So this year is a lead up. But I will be the first white person that we know of to have stepped up foot on all 101 historically Black college campuses in the country.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, very few people have ever been to all campuses. So
that's pretty cool, man. So one of the things we like to do on From Prison to Purpose, and I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story of, being this ridiculously intelligent jewel thief that came up with this really great scheme and battling opioids to becoming this leading activist to shed light and awareness for other races. That's pretty cool, man. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story of purpose. And so I think you're probably on this camera right here. And so one of the things that we like to do is let the guest just stare into that camera and say whatever you want to say to whoever your targeted audience is. A lot of people want to speak to those incarcerated. A lot of those want to speak to families. Whatever it is that your line of expertise is in, now's your chance to say the most important thing you could say to them.
I am an imperfect, flawed human being who has made a ton of mistakes, a ton of conscious, horrible decisions. I've hurt people. I have victims. I've betrayed trust. I've done everything just about that you can do within reason to be a negative influence on society. So I relate really well to people who've been through what I've been through. And I'm here to tell you that if you want to change, to be better, to redeem yourself, you are worthy. You are redeemable. Never think for a second that you don't have value or that you don't have purpose. It took me 50 years to find my path and purpose in life. And I struggled with not having a reason to be here. I've never really toyed with taking my own life. Even though I've had dark days, it's never something I've truly seriously considered. Be patient. Enjoy the journey. Just because your journey might be prison or county jail doesn't mean that journey is not going to turn into something so amazing and glorious that you can't conceive it right now. Like, I remember those dark days, and I just want people to know that those clouds move, that sun comes out, it rises every day. If you let God have control of your life will change, and that you literally can do anything you want. I mean, I've lost everything I've owned twice. I've been home. I was homeless earlier this year. That's how dedicated I was to crossing the country, living in my truck. I don't have an address. And I couldn't have the strength or conviction to do this had I not been to prison, had not God not pulled the veil back from my eyes in prison. So I know I'm one of those success stories, and I want people to know everybody can be a success story.
That's good. George, I want to thank you for coming on. And
Thanks for having me.
Amazing.
Thank you for breakfast.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Then I got the steak.
Like this video? Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a single content drop in the future, and keep up to date on all future episodes of From Prison to Purpose.